Assuming it switches over, that is.
Well, they can hear you now, so.
Yeah.
But it should be
That's.
live now.
I'm just gonna refresh my page because I don't see it switching the scene. There we go. Now we're live. Now I see it. What's up, nerds, and welcome back to Heroes Never Die, your one-stop spot for all things competitive Overwatch and Overwatch 2. We are wrapping up the holiday season as we are just about to enter the new year. We've got a lot of stuff happening here since our last episode. We took a last week off, obviously, because of the holidays. And free agency window for the Overwatch League is upon us. We got some last minute rule changes, which are definitely going to impact some of the roster building, which we'll get into. We had another show match, which was a run it back rematch between the San Francisco Shock and the Dallas Fuel, which happened here a couple of days ago, which was pretty exciting because we got a roster reveal for the Shock with some not so subtle surprises based off of the aforementioned rule change. But before we get into that, of course, I do want to thank all of our returning listeners out there, both in video and audio form. And as you can see, joining me as always is my co-host Spyder. Spyder, how are you doing tonight?
Got to get used to that. I'm doing good. I have a new mixer, so I've been playing with it, still getting used to it. I got to remember to hit the right buttons at the right time. Which, if you've played with me in Overwatch or World of Warcraft, you know I kind of struggle with that. So
Hmm.
it might be a learning process, but we'll get there. But I'm doing okay. I mean, we had a really good Christmas. Unfortunately, Santa decided to gift most of the household COVID. Somehow we live in a very small house. Somehow I have managed to dodge it thus far, and not avoiding it. Like it's like I said, it's a small house, so we're not like quarantining people. We're all
Hmm.
vaccinated, so we're like, okay, we're either gonna get it or we're not at this point. But so far, most of us, me and two of the bigger kids have managed to avoid it. So it's just the little one and my wife. But other than that, been playing some Overwatch, still sticking to kind of what I said last time, like the playing like the dailies and then logging off, or maybe playing an extra game or two if I'm having a good day. But
Hmm.
man, if I go like 0-3, I'm out as soon as those dailies are done. Today I actually played more than that to try to knock out some of the arcade stuff, like the Win five arcade games weekly challenge, and then the tank challenge, because I found out that no limits is a great place to finish the tank challenge for mitigation, because you just go Reinhardt or Sigma and then just throw up your shield the whole time, and it doesn't matter if you win or lose because most people are memeing anyway, like running like five Torbjorns or stuff like that. So nobody's gonna get mad at you for just standing there and occasionally swinging your hammer.
Hmm.
So that's a fun place to get the tank challenge done if you don't want to wait in the queue. But other than that, I went through Elden Ring over the break again with some mods, and I played some World of Warcraft. It was a good holiday. What about you? How was your time off?
It's yeah, pretty relaxing. I shouldn't say we. I just upgraded my TV in the man cave, so I have officially gone to 4K. The TV that we had in there was like 7.5 years old, so we were due for an upgrade at that point. And of course, my dad's like, why'd you unhook the DVD player? Well, we don't really need it because I got the PS5 in there, which can play literally everything at this point in time. So, he's gonna, get some taking used to, the new setup, but definitely much more manageable of a setup compared to what we initially had. Because, he would have like his Blu-ray player, his DVD player. He had this like, we have like one of those like 500 disc changers. That's like a DVD player as well. But it's just
What?
there's way too much going on for like one setup on top of like the surround sound and all of that. Everything's just consolidated at this point in time. So it really feels like the future is now, old man, in the household, which is fantastic. But yeah, things have been pretty good. We just got our normal Raz kill today in World of Warcraft, started heroic progression, got the first boss down. So that was nice. Of course, always loot drama with group loot. Everyone's like, "Oh my god, it's gonna be so much better," and meanwhile, people are just getting shafted left and right. Like, losing a best in slot bow to arguably your worst player in the raid team. People just not winning tier at all. People having to mostly gear solely out of the vault, or just like outright losing every contested role there is that we've had this entire tier throughout the first couple of weeks. So, I'm enjoying Warcraft, but the Raiden aspect, primarily in regards to group loot, has definitely been a mixed bag to say the least. But still enjoying the
Hmm.
priest, but I still got to make the switch over to discipline now that we are starting heroic progression. But all in all, I did get a little bit of Pokemon time in because for the holidays, I got our middle nephew, Pokemon Scarlet. So, of course, when he was sidetracking and doing other stuff, playing with some of his other Christmas toys, I just, yoinked the cartridge and started to play. And, got further progress in the game than he did. So, I still got to
Hmm.
actually pick up the game myself. But, enjoying that. But, just the first like 10 minutes of that game, or just really any Pokemon game nowadays, is just so excruciating because like there's no way to skip any of the fucking dialogue. And it's just like, all right, come on. I just want to go out in the world and battle Pokemon and kick some trainers' asses. And then it's just like, oh, let's go talk to this person. Oh, you have to go to school. It's like,
Yep.
come the fuck on. It's like
Look, man,
I'm over it.
I this is the world of Pokemon. Yes, I know. I've been doing this for 20 years now.
Mhm.
There needs to be like an option of like, look, man, I've been playing since Red and Blue. I know the gist at this point. Like, just tell me what's new, and
Mhm.
I will go out there and do it if it works. Supposedly,
Mhm. Right.
I held off. Like, both of my kids want the new Pokemon game, but I kind of held off because they're both kids that get easily frustrated when things don't work. So,
Okay.
um, in turn, I one of my son's gift was Sonic Frontiers, which I was like, okay, it's open world Sonic, like he can just run around and be Sonic and stuff. That game has some serious design problems. Like it's like a tech demo that they forgot to put the tech behind it. It's very weird and frustrating. But I did the same thing you did with Pokemon. Like every time he's not playing Sonic Frontiers, like I'm trying to play it to try to figure it out, so that when he's like, "Dad, how do I beat this thing?" and I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, you gotta do this." Like he literally got to a boss, and it was harder than almost any Elden Ring boss I had to face because he didn't get any upgrades, because like it's an open world game, so you can upgrade like your damage, your defense, your speed, and do all that, but he didn't do any of that, and he got to the boss and you're thinking, okay, well, he could just go back and get the upgrades. No, it locks you in the boss arena until
Oh,
you
damn.
until you finish it. So like I had to like be like pixel perfect on like the deflex and the dodges and stuff, and we finally beat him after like 45 minutes. That game has some issues. So I'm kind of wishing I would have got the Pokemon game, but he's been having fun with it. So we'll get Pokemon down the line. I think we're gonna go. I think we're gonna go Scarlet as well, just because I think their friends both have Violet. So
Okay.
kind of trade, but I have to double check on that. But
Yeah,
it's been
it's
fun.
always funny. Like my dad's like, well, how do the different versions work? I'm like, Dad, it hasn't changed since Pokemon came out. There are exclusives to both versions of the game, and you can just trade them back and forth. But for him as a Pokemon Go player, his big question is, well, is there any like cross platform, like transfers and things, which is common in 2023. So you can get something specific to Pokemon Go, by like sending a Pokemon over from one side to the other. But that's down the line. But all in all, outside of that, I'm reading the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Les Ronin
Oh, that's
series,
so good.
which has been like on my like read list forever, and I'm finally getting around to it. So, I'm only like one volume in, so I still got a ways to go. But like, I'm really digging just the change of scenery and the colors in that book really pop. So it's really different compared to like what I'm used to seeing for the turtles, which is great. So it really helps stand out. But it's
It's so
always
good.
been one that my friends are like, "Oh my god, you got to get around to this," and I'm
Mm.
finally getting to that point. So. Um, as someone who grew up watching and still loving the Ninja Turtles to this day, like I'm just over the moon with that one. But enough about the holidays. At least on that front. Obviously we still have Winter Wonderland, or whatever the hell you want to call it, because it really is no Wonderland in this case, as we mentioned in our prior episode. But just as a reminder on the cosmetic front, we do have both the uh, gingerbread bastion skin, which you can purchase for a grand total of one currency. And, Spider, I remember when I saw this and the amount of people on Reddit and Twitter were like, WTF, Blizz, why are you leaving me with an odd amount of coins?
I'm one of them. It's so frustrating. Like, why do that? Like, I would have rather them made it 50 coins, and then at least then it would be even, or 0 coins. Like, why can't they make it free? Like, did they forget to code in like the 0? Like, it's so dumb. Like, every other cash shop has freebies in the cash shop. You just set it to 0. Or look, even if you can't set it to 0, there's a really easy way around it, and it's the same way Epic Store does their storefront. You set in an amount, and then you discount it that amount. Like, and we know they can do discounts because their bundles are always at a discount. Whether or not that's an actual discount can be argued, but it's shown at a discount. So, it's stupid that they did that. Like, I hope, like, for February or something, for Valentine's Day, they're like, oh, here's a icon and 1 coin. So, the people who got the Bastion skin are, back to an even number, and the people who didn't get the Bastion skin are on the other side with 1 extra coin. So that pisses off a whole new group of people. So it would be even funnier. But it's cool that they did this. I mean, people were like, we used to always get 5 loot boxes, so we're getting like a Bastion skin, and wasn't there like a weapon charm or something else with it?
Yeah.
And then we also got the free portrait. So I mean, it is what it is. We knew Blizzard was going to be a little stingier this year, but it's a cool skin. I mean, I don't think I'll use it over the gift wrap Bastion skin because I think that one's far superior. But it's all right.
It's not bad. I mean, it fits the theme. I'm still using the Lego Bastion skin, and I don't think I will ever swap off of that one in particular.
I like that one except for the sounds. Like, I do not like the like
understandable.
The brick sounds, just something about the brick sounds is off to me. Like, I don't know. It's just like it sounds like, at this point we have a good frame of reference. It sounds like a worse version of Ramatra's staff. And that already is bad. So
Right.
there you go.
But yeah, I just love how when it comes to the currency, we basically had the issue of people buying stuff from the shop, then suddenly having negative coins, to now all of a sudden everyone just having an odd amount of coins because of this. So it's just like there's no win in here when it comes to the currency in the game. But of course, the cynic in all of us is like, well, if they can basically give this away for free, you know, why aren't we getting more free stuff? It's just it is what it is, unfortunately. But
I have
thankfully,
so many icons at this point. Give me like some picture backings or some like titles or something, like, Jingle Maker or something, something stupid.
Right.
Like, we're all, look, if you haven't been watching the streams, which you should be, because we'll talk about it here in a second why you should be. Most of the streamers have the loot box icon now because apparently they're quietly protesting. So you need the loot box icon. But if you don't want to use that, you should have hundreds of others options at this point.
Yeah, just maybe throw in some of just like the player cards, something newer for Overwatch too, because not everyone has a surplus of those like they would with the player icons. But on the Twitch front, we also have the Twitch drops happening, basically like through the new year for that Slayin Diva skin. Which Diva across the board has a very good selection of skins available in the game. So like when I see another Diva skin pop up, sure, I'm still excited, but it's just the fact that like I already have like 4 or 5 favorite diva skins at this point in time. If you're just adding on more to the pile, chances are I'm just never going to equip it at this point in time, as much as I do like this new one. But just basically out there, you got these readily available to you. And of course, like with all the Twitch drops, it's just, accumulative hours, watching the streams. Just, assuming you can find someone who is still streaming Overwatch, because, we were talking pre-show, where, like tilt factor can definitely come into play. So, if you're just throwing something on and then like leaving it, you might want to like poke in every now and then just to make sure that the stream is still ongoing.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of like a Genji skin for me at this point. I almost never play Diva, so it's just gonna
Mhm.
be thrown on the pile, and then I'll be like, "Oh, cool! I got Diva and Mystery Heroes. Let me see what skin I had equipped. Oh, cool! I had that one equipped." That's kind of how it is. It is a nice looking skin. I think they did a good job with it. And as much as we were knocking the Bastion, 1 gold coin, we are getting this one technically for free as well.
Mhm.
Because you can argue that, oh well, time is money, and I have to sit and watch. Well, you don't really have to sit and watch it, dude. Just leave it up. Like you said, check in on it every once in a while to make sure it's still on an Overwatch page, because most Overwatch people stream generally host other Overwatch streamers. Or hell, you can always just throw it up on Emong or J3. Those guys
Mhm.
still stream like 9 hours a day of Overwatch. I don't know how. I would go crazy. But it is cool. I like the Twitch drops. I like Twitch drops for pretty much anything, because at the end, like I said, it's free stuff. So why not? But this, I'm curious to see what the next one's going to be, because they did say this is going to be an ongoing program. So I'm curious to see what the next skin is going to be like. If it's just going to be a winter skin, or if they're going to pop out a Valentine's Day skin early. So we'll have to wait and see.
Absolutely. Now, outside of that, it's been a pretty like light couple of weeks for the Overwatch 2 front. But we did get a little bit of a surprise in news and kind of like their like end of the year update from Blizzard. And they were talking about like some of the things that have happened over the years, some of the new pieces that they've put in place in regards to some of like their personnel. But the biggest takeaway that we got here was the fact that they officially confirmed that we will have a physical BlizzCon in 2023. Now, details on this are very scarce. We're supposed to be learning more about it early in the year. So, we don't have a time, we don't have a date or a venue as of yet. But we did also have like the announcement of the Overwatch World Cup, which we'll talk about here in a moment. But they basically said, "Hey, fall 2023 Overwatch World Cup." And as soon as that news dropped, I was like, "Oh, does that mean we're gonna get a BlizzCon?" And then this news hit. So thank God, because part of me was like so worried, like we were past the point of no return when it came to BlizzCon, knowing that we haven't had one since 2019. And obviously, like, so much shit has gone down recently with Activision Blizzard. Obviously, the ongoing buyout we have with Microsoft. And, for me personally, like, obviously, BlizzCon is always a great opportunity to, meet new friends. Just engage with the community. Obviously, there's a bunch of like community parties because we're primarily always involved with like War of the Podcast with Calm Before the Storm, and it's always been a good time. But there are just few conventions like it out there, and being there for like the Overwatch reveal back in the day definitely was one of the more treasured moments I've had from the event. So glad that it's back. Eager to hear more. And I'm just hoping that the price gouging isn't going to continue on that front, much like it has been on the digital side of things, because yeah, all the transactions have definitely not been great for the consumer.
Well, the price is gonna go up, because this is Bobby Kotick's last stand, man. This is the last trip to the Cosby Suite. Like, this is before he gets the final boot from Microsoft. Okay, jokes aside, like, I'm glad BlizzCon is coming back. I'm curious to see in total what capacity it's going to be. I feel like it is still going to be like a smaller, like a scaled back version of BlizzCon, um, compared to like the last couple that we saw before COVID,
Mhm.
just because of everything surrounding it. Like you mentioned, the lawsuits and all the allegations and stuff like that came out. But I'm excited for it to come back because World Cup. Like that's honestly like the biggest draw for me. Like the game announcements, as we've seen over the past couple years, still happen. The news cycle has continued. Sure, there's not like a huge dump all at once, because they did like those BlizzCon online things once or twice, and I don't know, they didn't really capture it, and I think they kind of figured that out too. So they were kind of like, okay, own teams will do their own announcements and stuff like that. So the announcements all coming at once again will be fun, but it's World Cup for me. Like that
Mhm.
is going to be the most fun because I feel like World Cup is like one of the more pure like Overwatch tournaments. We've got like contenders and stuff, and then we got Overwatch League, which is getting better. But I feel like World Cup, we always have like those stories, like you have like Mickey coming out of there. You have USA finally beating South Korea, China coming out of nowhere, Team Canada being crazy. Australia running a stream team and getting absolutely dominated. Like you have so many fun storylines in the past
Mhm.
that I'm ready for it to come back. So I can't wait to do you know cover that and watch that. But other than that, swag. I'm looking for the swag. Like I at this point, I have no hopes of going. Like it's just it's not where I'm at in my life right now. Like I can't make a trip cross country when I've got 3 kids and a wife at home. So
Mhm.
um, it's just not where I'm at right now. So I'm going to be watching it digitally regardless, but I am happy that it's coming back.
Yeah, that's when Ramses and I just Discord call you, put you up on our phone, and then we just carry you with us.
There you go. And then I can yell at the guy in front of you that's, yelling for random people. And I'll be like, hey,
Mhm.
hey, hey, dude, he sucks. He's terrible. That's why he didn't get re signed. Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry. Too
yeah,
soon.
basically. Too soon. Oh man. I think outside of things you just mentioned in regards to the World Cup, for me, just as a general Overwatch esports fan, from like the earlier days, one of my fondest memories is seeing Rogue's swan song, so to speak, as Team France, seeing them get in to compete for like one last opportunity with one another. It's a bittersweet moment, but definitely one that I enjoyed seeing play out storyline wise. But obviously, like US finally winning the big one at the World Cup after constantly shitting the bed year in and year out. It's definitely been the biggest highlight and probably the most raucous I've seen. Just the Overwatch esports scene up to this point. So we'll have to see how things shake out. But of course, with the World Cup coming back, as we mentioned, finals are set for the fall of 2023. But of course, you got a lot of stuff kind of like leading into that, starting with stage one. Where we do know that 36 countries are going to be competing in regards to the World Cup for 2023. So we'll go through like the whole application phase in regards to selecting your committees. We'll have open tournaments, trying to like figure out basically like seeding and so forth. Basically, it's an opportunity for you to like guarantee a spot in the World Cup for your country. And then it'll announce like who the staff members are, all of that stuff. Then you got team tryouts. And then, we basically enter the World Cup qualifiers. But basically, for the group stage, you got the top 16, and then for like the playoff stage, which would be presumably at BlizzCon. I mean, it would kind of have to be. I can't imagine they're going to be doing like, two separate events on top of like the Overwatch League stuff. But you'll have
Yeah.
the top 8 countries duking it out for the final stage there. But all in all, like we've we've seen some changes on the Overwatch League front, which will probably also tie into the Overwatch World Cup, with you know potentially more players being added to the pool in this case. But my big thing is just like with so much uncertainty and with APAC still in the Overwatch League, yep, still been awfully quiet about that. Like I'm really worried this might be one of our only opportunities to see South Korea. What's up?
Sorry, and Nikki needed something.
Ah,
We're good.
right on. But yeah, so with all the APAC uncertainty, we'll have to see like if this is going to be the main avenue where maybe we'll get introduced to some new talent.
Yeah, I mean that's the big draw of World Cup, right? Is we get to see all these ladder heroes and stuff like that actually try out and make teams, and I hope the different regions don't just pick the pro players or the high contender players. Like I hope we get like some of these unknown, like I said, ladder heroes and stuff like that. But overall, just the format looks good. I mean, the committees worked out fairly well. I'm curious to see who's on each team for the bigger regions, but it's the smaller regions that I always like to pay attention to. Like Japan was always one of my favorite teams to watch because they were just like batshit crazy. Like they would just
Mhm.
rush, 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 and that might be really good in Overwatch too. So we'll see how things play out. Um, I'm curious to see how the qualifiers get broadcast, just because in the past they've done that a few different ways. And they said like the I have it up on the screen, and they say 36 country and regional teams compete in 6 regional qualifiers, but they don't tell us like what the qualifiers are. They don't tell us the format. They don't tell us if they're going to be live events or if they're going to be you know even if they're not live events but online live events,
Mhm.
like like they've done in the past. Are they just going to be like contenders ish matches where they throw 2 people in to cast it halfway around the world, and then here is the play. So I'm curious to see, like I don't expect like the level of what we got that one year where we got like 4 live big events, but I'm curious to see if we get like, here is NA's qualifier week. Here is Korea's, like the Oceanics qualifier week. Here is EU's qualifier week and stuff like that. Like I'm looking forward to seeing how they do that a little more. I'm also looking forward to seeing how the committees do things, because there was always a lot of social engagement in the past, and that's kind of one of the fun things. Is you got people like like Jane or Jake, or the I know the Chinese rosters were always like hyped up on Billy and stuff like that. So seeing the social interaction is a lot of fun too. Like they pull like random people out in Australia that are a lot of fun. It's just a fun event overall, and I'm looking forward to hear more. I hope that they don't do what they did before, where they just like, here's the top 36 ladder regions. Like I hope they have like a better way of picking that initial 36, but from that point on, I'm more curious to see what they do.
Absolutely, and who knows? Maybe US will be able to run it back, but only time is going to tell on that front. Now, outside of that, we also got an update from Sean Miller earlier in the week as we were entering the free agency window opening up, which was last Friday. And Sean Miller basically announced that they have lowered the league minimum age for the Overwatch League competition to 17 starting in the 2023 season. Basically saying like, hey, it's a free to play world. We want to make the top level Overwatch competitive play as accessible and inclusive as possible. Now, I've seen a lot of tweets, kind of like on both sides of the fence here. Some people saying teams really got no uh, mention of this from league officials. Others saying like they knew about it for at least a little bit of time. So I don't know what the truth is, if it's somewhere in the middle or whatnot. But obviously, lowering the league minimum opens the door for a lot of the quote prodigies to enter the scene, in particular. But it is safe to assume that there are certain Overwatch League teams who this benefits far more greatly than others. Like, I don't know, the San Francisco Shock, who have basically just been using O2 Blast as their feeder team, who, if you guys have not been paying any attention to contenders Korea or the Pacific, O2 Blast has basically not lost the finals in like 4 years. They
Yeah,
basically won
they
whatever,
are
like they've won the last 7 competitions. Um, so if you
handily.
guys remember like the GC Busan Royal Road, it's basically honestly like just beyond that level of
Hmm.
insanity. Like it is not the competition's not even been remotely close in that region at the contenders level. And yeah, we saw a couple of those pieces come into play
Hmm.
during the announcement of that roster, which, great for the Shock. But, like, I just remember seeing this and I was like, man, why couldn't this just come a little bit earlier? But, it
Hmm.
is what it is. But as a whole, we always talk about like the over the hill age rate when it comes to esports. And if you
The
lower the
old
league
man.
minimum, uh, like I'm not gonna say it's going to change the level of turnover, but it definitely gives you a wider range of talent to pull from at this point in time. Whereas before, we always kind of like had the like, oh man, he's just gotta hold out for like 3 or 4 more years, and then he'll be like Overwatch League ready. And
Yep.
now, we bump it down a little bit, and then all of a sudden, the opportunity is much more realistic than what we initially would have anticipated, knowing just, sometimes the level of uncertainties that we have, not only in the Overwatch landscape, but esports as a whole.
No, I think this is, kind of a bigger change than people think it is, just because of the fact that it did open the door to so many, so many new players and allow them in. Um, you know, the whole argument of if teams had notice or not, just you can kind of throw that in the rest of the trash bin of, hey, the league is terrible at communicating things, which I give them a lot of shit for, but it may not be entirely their fault because they may not know.
Mhm.
With all of the moving pieces going on with the acquisition, with the China thing, with various different laws and stuff changing overseas and locally. So, this I don't think was affected by those as much as some of the other things that they failed to communicate. I feel like this is just something that it may have took a little longer legally to get the okay from. But at this point, it is what it is, and I'm glad that they did it just because it does open the talent a little more. I don't think in 1 or 2 years time this is going to be as big of a story, but it did definitely change the landscape of this coming season very much because we kind of knew the pieces we were working with, and now that's entirely changed. Like you said, like O2 Blast, it's like, okay, we knew Shock was kind of keeping a Korean team. Like they were trying to build towards a more Korean team was kind of what it was hinted at. But we were like, okay, well, O2 Blast is really good, but they're not all eligible. So what are we going to do? And now it's basically like, well, now imagine you have O2 Blast with Proper, and you're like, oh shit, that's a scary ass team. So it's going to be fun to watch. But yeah, I do feel a little bad if some teams did know about it. But if some of the teams complaining are also like the Paris Eternal, it really depends which team is complaining at this point, because
Mhm.
you have your teams that are going to spend money, and then you have your teams that you thought wouldn't spend money, and then you end up with like the Boston Uprising, and you're like, wait, that's like their best team since 2018. What the hell happened?
Mhm. Yeah, it's definitely been an interesting week because we basically got three teams that have been, I would say, like fully picked at this point. I wouldn't say fully fleshed out in the sense that I don't feel like all of them are 100% well-rounded in in every sense. I'm primarily only referring to Vegas Eternal, uh, more so over Boston and San Francisco in this, right? But yeah, so obviously, we talked about Paris moving over to Vegas, not really rebranding, but we do know that they are bringing back a couple of players from last season's lineup. So they announced that they have re-signed the DPS Dove, Mithel, and then you have Lucamino and Rack Attack returning for your support duo. So you got four returning players from last season's roster. So looking at it, it was basically just like Wub and Kwawi who didn't come back to the rebranded Eternal in this case in time. So they have ventured to Vulcan as a new addition as their tank player. Now, if you're wondering, well, I don't really remember too much about Vulcan because he was on the New York Excelsior, and you're probably thinking, wait, he was? I mean, he was riding a pine basically like the majority of the season, which is probably why you don't really remember him because they were primarily running their Korean roster. Uh, for lack of better results, I mean, the results really weren't there for New York across really the entirety of the season, much like the Eternals. But yeah, they bring in Vulcan, and my first thought was like, I sighed when I saw this because like I knew moving a team from Paris to Vegas meant that this was going to be a budget team, and then we saw the sign in, that we saw the re-sign in of players, and I was like, man, they're really just trying to stay in that lateral movement and not really expect a whole lot in regards to the results. But who knows? Maybe the coaching this year is going to be enough to bring them up like that next level.
Hmm.
But this is all about whether or not they can find a diamond in the rough on this team because regardless of what faith I may have in the coaching staff, because like I'm really anxious to see how Empress does at the Overwatch League level, just knowing the pedigree
Yeah.
that she's bringing into the league. Like this is the hardest assignment outside of maybe whatever experiment is happening on the New York Excelsior front with their roster building technique, which still seems to be the direction that they're taking. Maybe not to the full extent because they seem like they were going for more of a mixed roster on top of that, but still trying to stay true to the lane that they're sticking with. But man, it's I don't have a whole lot of confidence right now, just roster face value wise.
I mean, we don't know what the other rosters are at this point, and you got to remember that most of these guys came from a fairly decent contenders team, so they
Hmm.
were kind of thrown to the wolves last season. They didn't have a whole lot of time to acclimate. Who knows what resources they had behind the scenes at that point? Because you got to remember the Paris Eternal at that point had just dumped a roster, so they were basically in let's just finish out this season, whatever kind of mode at that point. So it does seem like they're investing a little more behind the scenes this time. So I this is kind of like my London team for this season. Like this is the team that I want to watch. Like these are like the plucky underdogs that I hope they do better than what people expect for. I don't have a whole lot of hope, much like I didn't have for London, but London proved me wrong this season.
Hmm.
So I think they have some good pieces. Like Malthiel, when he was in contenders, was phenomenal. Like he was definitely a standout contenders player. Maybe not to the level of like proper, but he was definitely someone that you thought could come into the Overwatch League and make an impact, or at least not be a detriment. Which didn't pan out so well last season, but I do think they have some pieces here that could work. Do I think they're going to be a top team? No. Do I think they're going to be a mid team? Maybe, but it's something that I think if they put the right amount of resources in behind the scenes, they can have a decent season. I mean, we've seen coaching makes a huge difference. Just look at the Titans last season. So I'm hopeful that they are not dragging their ass on the floor with a 1-13 record this season, but we'll have to wait and see.
Absolutely. But when I saw the announcement, it just really paled in comparison to some of the other announcements we got for like the roster announcements that we have seen, where it's like, all right, we got like our 5-6 man roster. So it was just underwhelming, at least on that front, especially when you compare it to a team like Boston, who just surprised the hell out of everyone with their roster announcement. So Boston entering the 2023 season are running Birdring, Striker, and Decay for your DPS trio. They have Smurf coming in as their tank, and Lee J. Gone and Izzyaki for their backline. So yeah, I mean, obviously, there were a lot of changes at the top level, with Pre and Supreme coming in, as well as Don Su for the head coach of the team. But like when I saw this announcement, I just had to sit there and I was like, wait, is this a meme account? Because like I
What the
didn't believe
fuck?
it when I officially saw it, and then like I took a moment and I just sat there and I double checked the Twitter profile. I'm like, not sure as shit. Like that is the Boston Uprising account, and then I saw Striker on there, and I was like, wait. So you're meaning to tell me that Striker is coming back to the Boston Uprising again? After already returning to this team and after already retiring multiple times at this point. And I just thought, like,
Hmm.
surely at some point it's going to happen again
Hmm.
because history leads in that direction.
I mean, at this point, the president of gaming is gone, so I guess we could say Stryker won that battle uh, with a few tactical retreats. But this is a roster, man. Like I was the same thing. I was like, wait, no, like somebody's playing like fantasy Overwatch at this point. Like this is crazy. Like how are you gonna have multiple championship winning role star players on like
Mhm.
every role outside of Decay who theoretically could be there as strong of a player as he is, but this is like an insane roster. Like the more I look at this roster, I'm like, well, like their weakness is what projectile, which Birdring can play. So like I don't know, like this is gonna be a tough roster. Like Boston's coming out swinging, and I am all for it because I guess they were getting tired of being known as the farm team, and they actually want to win something because then they can go back to being a farm team because they're like, oh well, we're a championship roster team.
Mhm.
Like we can, the stonks are down right now in Overwatch League for the players, but if you win, the stonks go up even just a little bit, and that's kind of what I think Boston is playing. Is they're like, okay, well, we can't sell players now, so we actually have to play the game to win, and then we can go back to selling players. But this is a great roster, and I'm excited to watch these guys play.
Yeah, I think it just got to the point where Boston's like, man, I'm tired of this Overwatch thing network just constantly shitting us. We gotta hard pivot at some point. And, we know like the trophies just as much just throw the cash on the table and you can take it home. And they're like, all right, we'll have an earnest attempt at this and we'll see how things go.
You
So
you know
who
what it
knows?
was? It's now that the Patriots are not doing so well anymore, they're like, we gotta actually put money in other things. We've got to do
Mhm.
something. Oh God, Tom Brady, please come back. Oh, never mind, don't come back, Tom Brady. You look terrible down there. Overwatch looks good. Cronky's
Mhm.
out there like struggling, like where do I throw my money? I'm running out of places on my yacht. So I don't know.
They saw the end to that Patriots Raiders game, which was, oh my god, I'm not one
I
of the
ha-
most embarrassing sports moments that I could ever recall.
I have I have blacked that memory out. And I'm not even like a Patriots fan. I'm just like,
Mhm.
oh my God. Look, I lived through years of Tony Romo as a Dallas Cowboys fan. Like it
Mhm.
like losing in the last 3 minutes of the fourth quarter was basically like his call sign. Like it didn't matter what the lead was. But I don't know. Yeah, it happened. So
Yeah.
moving on. This roster is amazing.
Yeah, and Boston, I mean, we just said they're done selling players, but we saw a lot of Boston players shipping out to Vancouver. Like, this is another thing. Um, so I have this in the show notes because I didn't know if they were done with the roster building, but I figured we might as well talk about it because we got some pretty big news on this front. So Vancouver Titans have announced at least 5 players on that roster up to this point in time. They brought back Spire. And then, in regards to the new blood on this team, we have former Boston Uprising players Punk and Crimzo. We also have Faith. But most importantly, our son Sugar Free has been picked up and signed to the Overwatch League for the Vancouver Titans. And I know as soon as I saw this, I messaged Ramses and I'm just like, our boy made it! Finally, the prodigy has come to the Overwatch League. The person who our network holds near and dear to our hearts. He's been someone we've been following ever since he popped onto the scene. And the moment is finally upon us. So we have the Titans aspiring to be sugar free. And I have to say, like, for 2 teams that I normally am not really excited about, between Boston and Vancouver, this season has completely changed everything. Or at least
Yep.
this offseason with these moves. So what year is this? I don't know. Well, I mean, I know what year it is, but it's a nice change of pace. And for the most part, it's just a sigh of relief because for the longest time, no one just like, oh man, it's still gonna be like, oh, when's Sugar Free gonna be available? Oh fuck, we still got another 2 years. Ugh, I don't know. And
And then
now
he left for
don't
Valorant
have
for
to
a
worry about it.
while.
Yeah, yeah,
And you're like, oh, we're never gonna get to see him.
yeah.
Like
Left
he
for
didn't even get
Valorant.
his chance.
Yeah, he left for Valorant. He was still filling in at contenders for like playoffs and whatnot. We're like, oh, maybe he's back. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. We don't really know.
Hmm.
Now he signed to the Titans, and it's just like, oh, thank God. He can finally have his moments in the spotlight, and I'm really excited to see what this team is going to be able to do because we saw the level of play increase for the Vancouver Titans. And, sure, there were some growing pains, but we saw the immediate impact with DPay being brought onto the team. And, yeah, we got some other changes in regards to,
Hmm.
the staff with the Titans. But, much like the Boston Uprising, I think these are moves in the right direction, and really anxious to see where this organization is going to go from here. But more importantly, I'm just a proud papa seeing Sugar Free in the Overwatch League after all this time, after hyping it up for God knows how long. So
Four
feels good,
years,
man.
5 years, 6 years. Like he started when he was 13, right? So it
Yeah.
has to be at least 4 years. Um, it's crazy to think that he's playing now. Like that, among many other things in my life, just makes me feel really old. But I am a little worried about this signing just because I feel like it's like the Gru meme where it's like Sugar Free signed, and he's like,
Mhm.
oh, he's finally signed to the Overwatch League. He signed to the Vancouver Titans, and he's like, He signed to the Vancouver. Oh shit! Like, um, I'm curious to see how this turns out, but man, I am excited to see him play. So we'll hopefully, or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, if the rest of the league is really like bringing the talent down, this could be good, and we could see a lot of fun stuff come out of this. But yeah, I'm as excited as I am. I'm also a little worried for him because there is a lot of chatter between the players. Like, oh, you mean like Dante was like tweeting out the other day, like, oh, you don't want to play for a crappy team on league minimum right now? Like, okay, well, clearly someone's not happy with the state of contracts, and clearly we're seeing more to the cogs turning behind the scenes by people letting this stuff slip out. So I'm skeptical, but happy to see that he finally made it.
Yep. Long time coming for sure. And then we had this show match between the Dallas Fuel and the San Francisco Shock. And initially I'm like, oh, like maybe we'll learn more about the Dallas Fuel roster. Um that didn't really play out that way. It was a Shock hosted event for one, but they had a land in Korea for this show match. And Shock come out on stage. They had like their spiffy like roster announcement video. And one of the major questions that people had about this when they saw the initial video was what's going on with Violet? Because that name was not on the roster. So who knows at this point in time, but the roster announcement video did list Finn and Proper returning from last season's roster. And then you have Hisane at DPS and Max at Tank moving over from O2 Blast, aka, the Korea superpower, which has just been dominating for like, past 7 tournaments. And then we have Vindame, formerly of the Soul Dynasty, coming in at main support for the San Francisco Shock. And I know there were like other O2 Blast members who were like obviously missing from this equation who are Overwatch League eligible, and we're still waiting to see where those pieces may fall or whether they're going to stay with O2 Blast or if they're going to rival teams or what have you. But everyone looked at this and they're like, shit. Proper and he's saying, is that even legal?
That's not even like the part that I'm excited about. Like, Max is a ridiculous tank. Like, Max is like this season's Proper to me. Like, he has just been shitting on every other tank and contenders that he's gone up against. Like, the differential between him and every other tank is insane. And then the fact that you have Finn in the back line and Vin Dame, who are both like candidates and role stars last season for like rookie of the year, MVP, is nuts. Like, this is a ridiculous team all around. And you had touched on the DPS. Like, obviously Proper has won everything at this point except for like coach of the year and a league title, which who knows, he'll probably knock those two out this year. But again, he's saying is nuts as well. So I'm curious to see, how well this team gels together and how well they do overall. But I don't have any like worries about it. Like, I think they'll be just fine. Violet, there is rumors that he is just gone. Like, he's dropped all the Shock information from his Twitter, but he's done that a couple of times. Like, he's dropped it and brought it back and then dropped it again. And Proper's actually done that a couple of times just to mess with people. So while we don't know, the fact that Violet has dropped it and is still currently dropped off of there, and there was no word, either means that he's going to be like a late re-signing, or he's just not going to be re-signed. Which, looking at this team, I don't think they need him at this point. Like, I love Violet. I think Violet's a phenomenal player, but Vindame was one of the standouts last season in Seoul, and Finn was, like I said, he was my runner up for rookie of the year last year behind Proper. So this, I'd hate for all the people who love to hate the Shock. Unfortunately, they are not going to make it easy for you this season, because this is a very stacked roster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we did have a couple of other moving parts outside of that. I know you and I have been talking about like, okay, like what's going on with the Dallas Fuel. And sure enough, in that show match with the Shock, they were fielding some of their players who have been moved to other teams at this point in time. Primarily, we did see the support duo of Fielder and Shio playing in this show match, who are now with the Atlanta Reign. So at this point, we have the Reign at Hawk, Vigilante, Stalker, Lip with Fielder and Shio in the back line. And, Dallas is an interesting case because, like, we really haven't had any announcements from them. We've seen some rumors. We did see Bliss from O2 Blast subbing in for the Dallas Fuel during this show match with the Shock as well, but nothing official as of yet on that front. So at this point, you're basically looking at Hanbin, Edison, and Sparkle as the only active roster members for the Dallas Fuel at this point in time. But knowing the names that were rumored to be the support duo, I wouldn't say has given me like the most confidence, but I think if you're looking at more of a budgetary option at support duo, maybe they are going to shell out some major cash for one of the other big free agents out there. So in a perfect world, Spider, obviously, like you got your ear to the ground in regards to like the journalist aspect of Overwatch esports and who's been rumored to be sliding in for your backline. Is there anyone out there in particular from a free agency perspective that you're like really hoping drifts towards Dallas's way here?
Oh God, when you ask me this kind of question, you got to give me like some heads up because there's like 700,000 free agents out there right now. Uh, I, I mean, I'd love to say Violet just because he's
Mhm.
the one I just talked about and he's gone. Sadly, I would have picked Vindame, but he got snapped up. Uh, there, that might be something I have to come back to
Mhm.
on just because there are a lot of options.
Mhm.
Um, Bliss being there is the heavily rumored one. MCD is another, rumored addition. So we could see that, shake out. We don't know total um what it's going to be. I have a feeling that Dallas at this point, with Hanbin and Edison and Sparkle, is kind of just playing the waiting game. Like they're trying to see who's going to shake out where. I
Mhm.
don't get me wrong. I actively think like Tasmo is making offers to people, but I have a feeling that you're right. I feel like they're budgeting back a little bit. Like I think they're looking at the market a little more. They're not going full send on throwing money at it. They got their championship at this point. They as much as they'd like another one, I feel like they're taking it a little slow to see how some of these
Mhm.
other teams shake out. The fact that Boston came out so hard um, might shake things up a little bit. Atlanta's another team in the Western region that is just throwing money at it. So maybe Dallas is going to take a step back. Maybe they're going to try to see what they could do with a like you said, a budget option and see how far it can take them for a season or two, just to see how things shake out. Just because we know that the organization behind Dallas is
Mhm.
they've got their toes in a lot of different pools.
Right.
So they're trying to work on CDL, like they're focusing on other esports. So now that they got that championship, I think they're taking a little bit of slow but you know probably in the next week or two, when we have like a really slow day, maybe we can do like a really slow week or something. We do like a fantasy like roster build for
Mhm.
like missing pieces, because by then I feel like we're gonna get a couple more of these announcements, but I feel like we're not gonna get as many full team announcements as we did. I feel
Right.
like we're gonna start getting like individual player announcements because we don't know when the new season starts. So If you're a smart social media manager, you're going to want to drip feed content to keep people interested. You're not going to want to Boston uprising it and throw your whole roster out and then being like, well, what are we gonna tell them now? Like, we can only show so many flashy Doomfist highlight intro videos, like, uh, that which the Shock did already. So, like,
Mhm.
what are we gonna do? Like, so you throw out like a roster announcement. Like, I think Houston's doing it really smart. Like, they've been doing like one a day or something, and their announcements are really funny because they're like the MS Paint like intern announcements. So that's how I think we're going to see other teams take that approach going forward. So, when we have a particularly slow news week, at that point we'll, maybe I'll do like a full build and I'll actually do, like some more in-depth research rather than off the top of my head.
Yeah, all I know is when I saw the initial rumor on the back line, I was like, hmm, interesting. And then I thought, I'm like, wait a minute. You know who's still on the board right now? Like, if you're gonna throw money at someone who is a championship winning player, I'm thinking just like, what if they're just gonna, wheelbarrow a bunch of money towards profit and bring him over? That was my initial thought when it came to Dallas's current landscape. But time will tell. Now you mentioned Houston.
Mm-hmm.
Houston has made some interesting big moves. Like this is another team that after obviously last season overall a pretty big success for the Houston Outlaws. It was their best finish, and everyone's just kind of like wondering, well, where do you go, from there? And only returning piece that they had was Pelican, and they got Fearless, you know, Overwatch League Grand Finals MVP. They also brought in Shu, and then Happy is back for the Houston Outlaws as well. So, we already got, at least four of your starting five at this point. They are just looking for a main support. Maybe Violet. Who knows? Time will tell on that front. But it's interesting because like we've had that conversation of what teams are going to be actively pursuing the budget option versus who are going to be the people throwing money down on the table because you can make a run for the championship more so this season by signing the free agents more so than what we have seen in years past for the Overwatch League. And Houston has definitely put themselves in a fairly nice position as well. And sure, they didn't just outright be like, all right, here's our starting five, and then we'll just kind of like go from there. But definite power moves. But at the same time, I'm also kind of sad that they did send out the announcement of Jake is no longer with the organization, which he was one of the original members of the Houston Outlaws when the Overwatch League first started. So kind of bittersweet on that front. But if you're a Houston fan, I'm you know I'm no like Outlaws bias fan by any stretch of the imagination because I purposely, you know, kick the hornet's nest when it comes to our community and also our hosts on this platform, because they are Outlaws fans. Uh, but man, like when I saw this, I was like, oh shit, like let's fucking go. Like this has me really hyped
Mm-hmm.
for what battles for Texas will come this season. But Outlaws, top three last season, championship contender this season. Time will tell.
I mean, they got their shit stomped in by a real Winston player, so then they decided to just buy that Winston. So you
It's
can't.
not a bad strat.
It's not a bad strategy, not at all. That it's literally the same strategy Dallas Fuel took to acquire the Paris Eternal that eventually turned into their championship roster. So it works. This is a pretty good roster too. Like this is. We kind of initially speculated this season would be like the budget option, but a lot of these teams and a lot of this free agency has shaken out to the point where A lot of like the what I hoped would happen, and I said it a few weeks ago, like it kind of levels the playing field a little bit. You're
Mhm.
getting some of these more championship level players on various different teams. We're gonna finally get to see, Happy behind a main tank that actually knows how to not feed constantly. We're gonna, get Shu in a situation where he's going to have two crazy DPS and not just one and then another DPS. So it's basically going to be three DPS. This is a fun roster to watch, and you touch on the Jake thing. Which kind of goes back to our previous conversation of like he's an old man at this point. Like what is he,
Mhm.
like 20, 26, something like that, 25. He is so old at this point. They do not even want to be associated with him. He is like the college kid hanging out with high school kids at this point. Like they just don't even want to talk to him. They're like, oh, that guy's kind of weird.
Mhm.
But I feel like, unless Jake is done with Overwatch, which I haven't watched any of Jake's recent streams, to kind of get like a feel on how he's feeling about Overwatch as a whole. Um, yeah, I feel like he could pick up a coaching job anywhere at this point because he knows Korean. He's been in the league long enough. He's had, results. Or,
Mhm.
he could always go back to casting, or, you know, um, he, like I said, he might be done with Overwatch at this point, like maybe ready to move on. Um, so I'm curious to see what happens to him. But in terms of like roster announcements, I've already praised them. Like I really enjoy their roster announcements. Like I have their roster announcements up on the stream right now, and I've been going through them. They're just fun. They're quick. They're funny. The intern shtick works for them. Um, Obviously, I hope they don't keep playing it out, but it's worked well so far. So I'm curious to see what the last couple pieces are going to be. Uh, but overall, like, so far every team we've talked about tonight, I've basically been like, oh, that roster is crazy.
Mhm.
And I hope that goes forward, minus the Vegas Eternal. That roster is mild. Um, like as overwhelmed as I am with the rest of the league, I am just whelmed with the or Vegas Eternal. Like it's gonna be hard not to say Paris Eternal. I
Yeah.
really wish they would have changed the name, but yeah, I mean it's. I hope we get some more over the next coming weeks because God knows we're gonna need something to talk about because that Olympus event's only gonna carry us so far.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I was trying to remember if like there were any other movements that we had seen. Um,
I I don't think
I
so.
I think the only other one that I can recall was the Lastro sign in with the Los Angeles Gladiators.
Uh,
Who also haven't really announced too much in regards to like team options.
mhm.
But that former Outlaws player moving over to the LA Gladiators. But we still have Funny Astro and Skewed currently on the roster, barring any adjustments on that front.
Hmm.
But outside of that, I want to say that was all of them.
I I mean the one thing we initially had on the show notes that we didn't talk about was they put out like that matchmaking MMR blog, and
Hmm.
as fun as it was, there really wasn't anything like pertinent in it other than the fact that they mentioned like the average player is like bronze 5 right now, which
Yikes.
yeah, which they mention is like much lower than they thought it would be. Like well,
Hmm.
I guess I should clarify that. Like the average new player is bronze 5.
Okay.
Um, they don't tell you what the average player is, but they do mention that most people sit around silver, and that's kind of what the going theory is amongst the community. But they had mentioned like most new players would come in and lose a whole bunch of games because they thought they were better than they were supposed to be. When anybody
Hmm.
who's played Overwatch, and if you watch like Seagull or Flats or Emong or CarQ, they've talked about this a lot the last couple of weeks. They're like Overwatch, as mechanically challenging as it is like a huge knowledge check. Like they specifically mentioned like Ramatra. Like if you don't know what Ramatra's ultimate does, you're just dead to it. Like you just and there's like, do you know what high noon is? Then you're just dead to it. And they said, you know, most new players don't know that, and they
Mhm.
mentioned that, like, you know, they changed the new user experience, and now they're putting in like matchmaking changes and stuff. So um it was, that was like the one interesting part to me, is like most people are much worse at the game than they think they are. And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, you have like 40 heroes at this point or something, like something crazy. Like somebody's coming in and being like, hey, what's that guy do? Oh, he can climb walls, he can jump, he can dash. What, how come he can dash again? You know, like there's so many minute things. And I don't know why it took them 6 years to figure that out, because I figured that out the minute Shroud started playing Overwatch and he got dumpstered. And I'm like, dude, this is like one of the most mechanically gifted people ever. And he's just getting absolutely dumpstered because he doesn't know what things do.
Mhm.
So, but I, you know, other than, you know, that random blog, I think that was the only news piece that we didn't talk about.
Right. That is interesting because, like, I remember like the last time they were talking about like the average skill level of players, and this was way back in Overwatch One. They were talking about how like the average player was gold back then.
Not anymore. I guess now,
The
um,
level of play is worse.
yes.
Uh, But is that because people have not acclimated to 5v5, or is it just because they weren't as good as they thought they were initially?
It's because the matchmaking and the rating system is broken now.
Yeah.
So uh, you know, those people probably are gold, but they haven't lost their 20 games or played or
Mhm.
won their 7 games, so we don't know anymore. And they did mention that they're, you know, I forget if it was in the blog post, but I, at some point they mentioned like they're iterating on that as well. But overall, like it, I don't know. As fun as the transparency is, there wasn't enough. Like it was basically like, here's how we do things. And we're like, okay, what are you gonna do to fix it? And they did mention like the one fix that they said is like, currently they match games as like a group, so they
Mhm.
take your MMR together and match it against another group of MMR. But they said it doesn't work real well in Overwatch 2 because you could be playing with a high MMR tank on one team and a mid MMR tank on the other, but the rest of the people are also higher, so it brings the average team up. But then that tank gets diffed and the team just gets ran over. So they said one thing they're gonna do is they're gonna match it more like 1-to-1. So
Mhm.
the tanks MMR is going to be the same. Each DPS is going to be matched with a similar DPS and support as well, more 1-to-1. And they said they're also looking at group matchmaking, but there's not a whole lot they can do with that sometimes. So, but I really wish there was like more of that side of it and less of the, okay, well, here's the numbers behind how we matchmake. I'm like, okay, we don't really care. Like, why doesn't it work? Like, fix that. Because like you've experienced it, anybody who's played Overwatch 2 has experienced, like most games are very much like roles one way or the
Mhm.
other. Like uh, I can tell you the last couple of days I've actually had some pretty good quick play games. In obviously not today because I mentioned I played arcade today and those were crazy. But most quick play games the last 2 or 3 days for me have been great because they've been like narrow wins and losses, and I'm fine with that. Like the rolls are annoying because a, it's just, it feels shitty to lose that badly, and b, you can't get any of the quests done if you're repeatedly
Mhm.
dying. So there is no like die 30 times quest. You know, if there was, that would be like one I'd complete like immediately. But yeah, you know, there, that's a whole different discussion. But
Right.
it was what it was.
Right on. Well, with that being said, I mean, that will basically cap off our night. So, of course, the best thing to do to keep in contact with everything going on with our network is to follow us over on Twitter at HND Overwatch. I can also find us over on YouTube at youtube.com/Overwatch League Network, or you can find us, like at HND Overwatch as well. Spyder's been doing a bunch of the shorts, which have been doing
Hmm.
fairly well, unless
Bully
or
and
you're
Roadhog
bullying
play
Roadhogs.
like that.
People aren't too happy with that for some reason, and that's
I
you know
don't
why
get
that
it.
is. It's because all these people are just locking Roadhog because everyone's like, "Oh my god, it's a new hotness," or everyone's like locking it in, and then when you show like how exposed he can be at times, they're like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa! I thought he was supposed to be meta,"
Wait,
and they
what do you
can't
mean
have
a
it.
shield blocks hook and there's a character with a redeployable shield at will? Who knew?
Mm,
Um, that being said, I think that particular short was just it was an MMR difference. Like I don't think
mm.
a Roadhog at my MMR would have fell for that like 8 or 9 times every time. But yeah, that really surprised me how much people dislike like as much
Mm.
as people dislike our May shorts, like Roadhog players are way saltier about that. And it wasn't even anything like super bad. Like I don't know. It took me by surprise. Like as much as people hate Roadhog, apparently the Roadhog players just come out and forced to defend each other. I don't
Mm.
know. So um,
Yeah.
I enjoy playing Roadhog, but I don't think he's healthy for the game the way he is right now. So again, different discussion. But yes, check out our YouTube shorts. They're on our YouTube channel, like you said, at
Mhm.
H&D Overwatch. Or if you, I found out if you watch one or two of them, at that point they'll show up in your shorts feed like every day because I always pull it up on my personal account just to make sure it looks good on the
Mm.
feed, and to totally not boost our numbers. But mo- honestly, most of the time it's just to make sure that I have the text centered the right way.
Mhm.
Because the first couple were really rough because I was like, this looks really great, and then I went on the feed and I realized you couldn't read half the letters because they were cut off the way the shorts display. So, but since then it has showed up in my feed. So just do that. Like I said last time, I have more regular content coming out around the new year. Once we get like into the new season, we're going to talk about like some new events, new map. No new hero for season 3, but we'll go back to the hero videos at some point. I have some fun stuff
Mm.
that I've been tinkering with on my personal channel. Some effects and stuff that I've been playing with. So it'll be fun.
I'll probably end up doing at least something with the World Cup as we inch closer to that, whether it's me just drafting rosters or doing power rankings. It'll be something on that front. But if you're not checking out the shorts on YouTube, you can also find them uploaded to our TikTok as well at H&D Overwatch. Watch them in both places. That would be great too. Boost the engagement up one way or the other. But outside of that, you could also reach us over on our community Discord at discord.me/OWLN show. But yeah, outside of that, you can also reach all of our hosts over on social media. You can find Ramses over at Ramses_GG. Spider, where can they reach you over there?
At underscore Spider Gaming, but Discord is the better place. I hardly ever check Twitter.
hmm And as for myself, you can find me on Twitter at Tumbly Drunk. Well, with that being said, guys, that will do it for us here tonight on Heroes Never Die. This has been episode 246. And we'll see you guys back next week. Don't forget to log in to spend your one currency to get your odd amount and also your gingerbread bastion skin. And, throw on some Twitch streams to get your Slayin' Diva skin. But until then, guys, take care, and we'll see you next week.